everyone and welcome back to another video. So I filmed this video yesterday and then I decided it was really boring, so I'm going to film it again and we're going to be twice as fast, bring twice the energy, and yeah, I don't know. Here's a book. Let me readjust the camera. This is my sketchbook where I'm drawing people. So today's video is an update, and I'm sorry about the light, nothing I can do about that. Today's an update about me drawing people. So, as you can see, I'm not very good at that. It's not something I enjoy. I'm fundamentally disinterested in the human form. This starting out was the first sketch that I made on my journey, my day one piece if you will. If you watched the previous video you would have seen me drawing this self-portrait on the other side where I really didn't do myself any favours. Nonetheless, here's another one. I'm just going to say that all of the images here were based on references kindly provided by Adorka Stock, who I will link below. I've been using their references for a very long time on the rare occasion that I do decide to punish myself by drawing a person. And all of these images were freely available on their DeviantArt, but they do also do paid packs, which I have not yet delved into. Anyway, this one, as you can clearly see, was very poorly planned because I completely ran out of room, and I didn't do it that bad. I just missed the end of her toes, but I had all this space up here I could have used. Alas, we learn. So I drew this by drawing a head shape, and then what I do is I take my pencil. If we say for a moment that this is my phone screen, I'll measure that on the phone screen, say, oh, it's about to the bottom of the wooden bit, so I'll come down here and say, alright, the next bottom of the wooden bit is roughly in the middle of her boob, and that's what I'll do then. I'll say, okay, here's the measurement of the head, and that comes down to the middle of her boob, so that worked out. Fantastic. And that's essentially how I lay out my proportions. That's how I was taught at school. You want about 5.5, 6, something like that. Make it up as you go along. So I use that very stringently, very strictly, basing it off the reference photo. And look, I'm not entirely convinced the proportions are correct. And my aims with this project is proportioning. I know I can draw detail, I know I can draw individual features and a hand and a foot if I have to. It's getting them all to go together and not look very uncanny valley, that's the problem. So when this didn't work out quite so well, I switched to this one where this was literally my phone screen, and I had a tape measure and I measured millimeter by millimeter to do a 1-to-1 transfer from the phone screen. And it looks pretty good. I don't know, I'm not convinced the head is in proportion to the body. But I don't really know how I would have gotten that wrong unless my measuring skills are shocking, which honestly I would not be surprised if that's the case. Moving on to the next one, I'm actually really happy with how this turned out. I notably did not draw the face. Don't really have an excuse for that. So I just really liked this pose. It was still simple. It was a 3/4 view. I was just trying to focus on basic standing poses at the minute. I love how the hands turned out. Overall, actually, I really do like this drawing. I think it's quite well proportioned. And I don't really have a lot to say about it. Maybe her feet are a little bit small, but I think that's just because she's got these lovely big thighs. And if her legs were skinnier, you'd probably say, oh no, those feet are in proportion. It's just because she's a bit heavier that her feet look small. Because that can happen as well, and that's where it comes in that you have to draw what you see, not what you know is there or think is there, as my old art teacher used to say. That was her favourite piece of advice to give out. Then, so these two I do have in time-lapse form, so let's roll the time-lapse. Okay, so I did not give myself a lot of time to do this voiceover since I sped these drawings up by so much, But essentially what I wanted to say is that at this point I had given up on a very strict measuring scheme to get my proportions right, and I was drawing just in a natural flowy way that comes a lot more naturally to me, which is the way that I do most of my drawings. I just feel it, I look at it, I see it, and as you can see, that foot was absolutely terribly too short, but thankfully I noticed and I fixed it, which is just something that you have to do sometimes when you're not measuring correctly. Moving on to this next one, I really love how this drawing turned out. I love the shape, I love the pose, I loved everything about it, and I had to exercise so much restraint not to make those hips extra curvy, not to make those calves extra like triangular, because it was just speaking to me and begging to be stylized, and I just love how it turned out, and I think it's perfect, and we're out of time. So at this point, and I mean, I was drawing these over the course of probably like 2 or 3 months. I know I said I would do like a monthly update on this project, but honestly, surprise, surprise, I'm not that motivated to draw a subject that I don't care that much about. Who would have seen that coming? So at this point anyway, I was getting a bit bored with the static poses, but I didn't really want to move on to doing full sketches of dynamic poses just yet, because again, I was trying to force myself to do it properly. But I just never do anything in order, and honestly, I'm not a sketcher either. I will literally pull up my expensive piece of paper and figure it out as I go along. Unlike, you know, most real artists who actually have a plan by the time they start their final piece. So I decided I wanted to do some gesture drawings, make it loose, make it sketchy, make it flowy. I have all these lovely, I think these are called motion lines or gesture lines. So I got the flow, I got the weight, I got the gravity, the angles, all of this going on. And I had a lot more fun doing these, and I think I did all of this in one day. And I had a great time doing it. And I didn't have to draw any faces or hands or feet that I didn't want to draw. That's just fantastic. I think this is like the first man I've drawn as well in this particular book, until we get to the next page where I have a man, and I quite like this pose. He was quite a fit looking fella, so there's a lot of like detail that I could have got into. He had these wiggly veins on his arms, and he had this real definition in his musculature, but again, I didn't want to go too crazy because I'm not supposed to, because we're focusing on the form and the weight and the gesture and the proportion, except I am a detailed drawer and I just can't help myself. Don't look at the hands. Don't look at his hands, look at everything else. Again, very happy with how this drawing turned out. And I even drew a face and attempted to make an expression. Aren't you proud of me? I mean, I pulled out all the stops for this drawing. I really did. So, as you can see, the next drawing is upside down, except it's not, because I'm left-handed and spiral bound notebooks are just not my friend. I can't cope. So I gave up fighting with it at this point and just flipped it around for this next drawing. And this one's okay. I think I managed to get the weight distribution pretty okay on this one. I really like how the legs turned out. I like the ankles and the heels. I don't know why. I think because they have like these really sharp bony protrusions kind of coming out. And I mean, I don't have the original image right here, so I can't tell you whether I might have slightly exaggerated those or not. Looks like something I would do. Made it a bit more of an illustrative style. But I really enjoyed doing it, and I think we can appreciate at this point that the proportions are really coming along. I'm not going to say that they're perfect, but the point is that when you look at it for the first time, it doesn't strike you as wrong. It doesn't strike you as uncanny valley. You don't look at it and say, oh god, that arm is like 3 times longer than it should be, and her hand is like way too big or something like that. You don't see any of that, and honestly that's what I'm going for. We're looking for good enough, not quite perfect. So this is clearly the last drawing that I did, and I did this, I'm scared to admit, probably like months ago at this point. I really liked it, and I brought it to, you know, some degree of finish. I, you know, defined exactly what were the last lines that I wanted. I left the sketch lines in place just for a bit of, I don't know, shading, I guess, and definition. Finished the face, finished the hair. And my favourite part about this drawing is the weight distribution. How I really got her flowing down through her toes, and I got this sense of movement and kind of floaty weightlessness through the hand. I also think the toes turned out really nice. This one, she had like her pinky toes stretched out, and it looks really weird in the drawing, but I swear that's what it was meant to look like. And I think the hands as well turned out really nice on this piece. Again, I love detailed drawing, and I know my hands can be hit and miss, but when they're good, they're good. And yeah, I feel like I don't really need to waffle on anymore. That is my update. That's where I'm at with my human sketching drawing challenge project. And I'll probably see you in another 3 months with another abysmal number of drawings that I have forced myself to do. Until then, bye!